Today's video is on how to persuade with one page. Hi, I'm Trevor Bragdon, and on this channel we make videos on how do you pitch and persuade your audience. Early in my career, I worked as the policy director for the Speaker of the House in Maine. And we had this challenge where we had lots of different legislators that we had to all get on the same page. And a lot of times you had all these various policy issues that were kind of sometimes a little obscure, or most of our members didn't really understand them well. So what we'd do is we'd create one-pagers to be really persuasive and help get our members on board with the policy, but also just help them understand it because they had to be experts on 20 or 30 different issues in any given session. So one of the things we found was if you could make a really persuasive one-pager, you were halfway there. Then you could get them on board, make them feel comfortable about it, and get them to help support your issue. So after doing hundreds of these one-pagers, my team and I came up with the formula for making a very persuasive one-pager. So the first step is to really think about what's the one point I want my audience to remember a year from now. Whatever the topic is, whatever you're doing, you really need to just sit back and think about that. What is that one thing? What is the idea, the concept, the fact? What do I want them to remember a year from now? And that helps organize all the content around your one-pager. Now, the next step is to start with the writing, not with the design. Now, I know sometimes people like to jump right in and start with the design, but I want you first to focus on the writing and really get your ideas clear on paper and in print. And one way to do this is to think about how someone actually reads and uses a one-pager. If you're using it in a legislative context where people are really busy and you're not really sure how much time they're going to spend looking at your one-pager, the idea is to really think about it from three different perspectives. The first one is somebody who just scans the document and they just read through it really quick. Maybe they just hit the top headline and look at the graph or the picture you have on the one-pager. Then the second level is to skim. Somebody might take maybe 15 seconds where they go through your one-pager and read, the headlines and maybe the sub-headlines and look at a graph for just a few more seconds. And then the final type of person is someone who studies the one-pager. This might be the staff member or somebody who's assigned to the legislator, but someone who really dives in and reads every word of your one-pager. That person really studies it. And, unfortunately, we like to think everyone does that. In reality, there's only a very small percentage of anyone who will actually read every word that you've written on your one-pager. But this whole premise of scan, skim, and study is a great framework to think about how to design the one-pager. So the first thing you want to do is write out your headlines that you want. If somebody just read and just scanned your document, what would be the point you're sending? And remember, you've come up with that one main point that you want them to remember a year from now. And so have that main point and then reinforce it with those other points. Now, if someone wants to skim the document, spend a little more time on it, write out your subpoints under it. Again, you're telling that same story with your one-pager. So if they just read the big headlines, they would get the main point. If they read the big headlines plus the sub-headlines, they would build on that main point, but it's still all reinforcing that one point. And then finally, with study, if they read all the supporting information, it all builds on that same theme. So if you start out by first designing and first writing out your words, headlines first, then subheadlines, and then fill in the details, you're going to be building a consistent story whether someone takes 5 seconds looking at your document or takes 2 or 3 minutes reading every word you've written. Now the next part about creating a compelling and persuasive one-pager is what do you do about graphs or images or charts? Well, charts and graphs can be really persuasive if they're done correctly. And there's all kinds of ways you can manipulate charts. You adjust the y-axis and blow it up so it shows the extremes. You don't really want to do that because that can be misleading and it hurts your credibility. But if you're thinking about what is the one point I'm trying to make and you look at your graph, you want to make sure it's showing something really clear when someone looks at it for 2 or 3 seconds. So if you're looking at the graph, maybe you want to show something grew and you show that directional change. Or maybe you want to show the contrast with a before and an after. You know, this was something before, now it's this after, and you show an extreme change. But the key here is really thinking about, even with your graph, having just one point that you're driving home and making it really easy to tell where it is. Once you've written out the words for your one-pager, you really want them to be between 100 to 200 words total. You really can't fit more than that on a single piece of paper unless you're going to go on the backside. But really, being in that 150 to 250 range is a good way to think about it. Internally, we joke about the Gettysburg Rule, which is never go over 272 words on a single piece of paper. Because, you know, if Abraham Lincoln could have brought the nation together in 272 words, you can probably explain whatever concept you're trying to convince people about in 272 words. But honestly, you probably want to even ratchet that back a little bit and be more in the 150 to 200 words on a single piece of paper. Then you want to send it to your designer and have them work through it with that clear hierarchy of your headlines and your text. When you get back your one-pager from your designer, I want you to look at it for about 3 to 5 seconds. Does that one point come through? If you were just to scan those headlines, does it make sense? And are you convinced? Or does it make sense and do you want to read more? Which is even better. Then I want you to take it and look at it for 10 seconds and skim it. See if it still makes sense, if you're making that coherent argument, reinforcing that one point you want to make. And then read through it, check it for grammar, errors, typos, those kinds of things, and then show it to someone else who's not been working on the project. Ask them to look at it for 2 or 3 seconds, ask them what the main point is. And then have them look at it for a couple more seconds, and then ask them again. Really check and make sure with those first 5 to 7 seconds someone is looking at this one-pager, it's clear what the main point is, and they want to read further. So if you want to persuade with one page, remember, think about it from the beginning. What's the one point I want my audience to remember? Then design and write your headlines so someone can scan it and understand what's going on. Then if they want to skim it, read a little more, they still get that same story. And finally, if they're going to read every word and really study your document, they'll be persuaded even more with all the details and facts and by looking at your graph. So I'd encourage you, use this formula for a persuasive one-pager. And if you want to learn more about how to persuade with numbers, check out our video over here on how to persuade with numbers.